They never ask you your name on a job like that. You show up in a work jacket with your crew, you shake one hand in the lobby, and after that you're just a contractor. That's fine with me. I've been the contractor for 15 years, and I've learned that the quieter you keep, the better the work goes. The building on Craddock Street had been vacant 2 years before Ellison Supply, and logistics moved in and started talking about restoring the original character. That's what they always say when they want the tin ceiling back and the brick cleaned. It's good, honest work. My crew, 4 men, all of them steady, had done 3 buildings on that block already. And when the property manager handed us the contract, I thought it was going to be a clean 6-week run. My daughter Addie was 11 that summer. She'd started keeping a journal, filling it with observations the way her mother used to. The color of the sky at different hours, whether the sparrows came to the feeder before or after it rained. Some mornings she'd read me an entry over breakfast, her voice still soft from sleep, and I'd drink my coffee and think that a man could build his whole life around moments like that. I'd been doing exactly that for 5 years since I lost her mother. Addie and the work. The work and Addie. That's the shape of things, and I don't need it to be wider than it is. We were 3 weeks in when the CEO came down to the lobby. I'd seen her twice in the building, passing through, a young woman, maybe 30, dark hair, always moving like she had 3 conversations ahead of her. The property manager had told me her name when we signed the contract. Nora Ellison. The company was hers. She'd built it herself in 4 years. Defense logistics out of a converted brick warehouse on the west end of downtown Cartwright. I didn't think much of that. I didn't think much of the name. A lot of people are named Ellison. She came down on a Wednesday morning with a tablet in her hand, and a look I recognized. The look of someone who has just been told a timeline is slipping. She walked through the drop cloths and the scaffolding, and she stopped in front of me. "You're the crew boss?" "Yes, ma'am." She turned the tablet around. The original scope had a 6-week window. She was pointing to week 4. "I have a client walkthrough on the 14th. The lobby has to be finished by the 13th. I looked at the tablet. I looked at the ceiling, where 2 of my men were halfway through cleaning 100 years of paint off the tin panels. Careful as surgeons. You can't rush that work without cracking the metal. I told her so, plainly. The original timeline was 6 weeks, because that's how long this ceiling takes done right. I can give you a finished lobby by the end of week 6, or I can give you a damaged one by the end of week 4. Those are the 2 options I have." She held my look for a moment. I didn't flinch, and I wasn't trying to be difficult. I was just telling her what was true. "I'll have the property manager find another crew," she said. She said it without heat. Businesslike, the way you cancel an appointment. She turned and walked back toward the elevator. I called down my 2 men from the scaffold. I folded the drop cloths myself, the way I always do. We loaded the van in less than an hour, and I drove back to the yard on Belridge Road without saying much. My foreman, Tate, asked me what had happened. I told him the client needed a faster timeline. "You didn't offer to speed up," he said. "You speed up that tin, you crack it," I said. She'd be looking at a ruined ceiling in 6 months and blaming the contractor. Tate nodded. He knew we had other jobs. I didn't think about Nora Ellison again. Not until 3 days later, when she came to the yard. I was sorting lumber near the back fence when I heard tires on the gravel. A silver car I didn't recognize. She got out in the same composed way she did everything. But she had a photograph in her hand, and she walked toward me with a look I hadn't seen on her face before. Not the business look. Something older than that. She stopped 6 feet from me and held the photograph up. It was a picture I hadn't seen in years, but I recognized it the moment I saw it. 2 soldiers in the field, sand and low hills behind them. The one on the left was grinning at the camera. The one on the right was me, 23 years younger, squinting into the afternoon sun. Ray Ellison had taken that photo on a disposable camera and mailed it home 2 weeks before the convoy. "Sergeant Cole Dantry," she said. She read it off the back of the photograph in her father's handwriting. I'd watched him write it. He always labeled his photos, said his daughter needed to know who the people were when he was gone. I didn't say anything for a moment. I just looked at the picture, and then I looked at her, and I understood why the name had been sitting in the back of my mind since that first morning in the lobby. She had his eyes. Same straight look, same way of holding still. "Ray was your father," I said. "He was." She lowered the photograph. "I've been trying to find you for 3 years. I had Sergeant Cole from his letters. I had the unit. The Army records take time. She paused. You were with him. I was with him, I said. There wasn't a chair to offer her. So we stood there at the edge of the yard, with the afternoon light coming through the fence slats. I told her what I could. Her father had been a captain by the time of the convoy, a good one. The kind of officer who carried the weight of his men personally, who knew every name. When the vehicle hit the device and we got him clear, he was lucid longer than anyone had a right to be. He spent most of it asking about her, whether she was doing well in school, whether she had people around her. He talked about you the whole time, I said. He wasn't afraid. He just wanted to know you were going to be all right. She was quiet. She had the photograph against her chest now, both hands on it. He made me promise, I said. Not in those words, he didn't say promise me. He just asked me to check in on you, make sure you had what you needed. He said your aunt would be raising you, and he trusted her. But he wanted someone to keep an eye on things. I looked at her steadily. I said I would, and I meant it when I said it. She was very still. The college deposits, she said. I nodded. I watched something shift behind her eyes. Not fall apart. She wasn't that kind of person, and her father hadn't been that kind of person either. But she went quiet in a way that meant she was setting something down that she'd been carrying for a while. I spent 2 years trying to find who sent those, she said. The account the transfers came from was closed. The bank couldn't tell me anything. She looked at me. I thought it was a scholarship fund I hadn't heard of. Or an error. A pause. It never occurred to me it was a person. It was never meant to, I said. She looked around the yard, the stacked lumber, the dust-coated scaffolding leaned against the fence. My foreman Tate, pretending to read something on a clipboard 30 yards away. Then she looked back at me. The birthday cards, she said. Every year postmarked from a different city. I travel for work, I said. I figured a postmark from the same place every year would be easy to trace. She almost smiled at that. Almost. You were hiding from me. I wasn't hiding, I said. I just wasn't advertising. I pulled off my work gloves and tucked them in my jacket pocket. Your father asked me to check in, not to introduce myself. I thought an anonymous gesture kept the thing clean. You built your life yourself. I was only trying to make sure the ground under you was solid. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, he wrote letters home. Near the end, the last few months. He mentioned you and almost everyone. He said you were the man he'd want beside him if things went wrong. She paused. He was right, wasn't he? I didn't answer that. Some things you don't take credit for. I have something for you, I said. I went to the office at the back of the yard. A converted storage room with a desk and a filing cabinet. And I unlocked the bottom drawer. I'd kept it in there since I got home. A sealed envelope, the paper gone soft at the edges from years of the drawer's climate. Ray had dictated it to me the last lucid hour, and I'd written it out by hand that same night in the aid station, sealed it, and addressed it to his daughter. In letters I'd printed as clearly as I could. I'd been waiting 17 years for the right moment to give it to her, and I'd started to wonder if the right moment would ever come. I brought it out to the yard and handed it to her. She looked at the envelope for a long moment before she opened it. She read it standing in the afternoon light, and I watched the yard and let her have the space. I knew what it said. I knew every word of it. I'd written it out by hand, and I'd read it over before sealing it, to make sure I'd gotten every word right. Ray had been particular about it, even in those hours. He wanted her to know he wasn't afraid. He wanted her to know about her mother. 3 things he'd never gotten to say, and he wanted her to know that the man beside him was someone she could trust. When she finished, she folded the letter along its original creases and held it in both hands. He said to tell you he was proud of you, I said quietly. He told me that twice, like he was worried I'd forget. She pressed her lips together and nodded once. Then she looked up. You have a daughter, she said. It wasn't a question. I'd mentioned Addie once. Her name was the screensaver on my phone. And when Nora had come into the yard, I'd set it face up on the lumber stack without thinking. Addie. She's 11. Does she know? She knows I served with a man I thought a lot of, I said. She knows I sent some letters. She's old enough to understand the rest when the time comes. Nora looked at the photograph one more time, then at me. You kept a promise for 17 years to a man you served with for 14 months, she said. Without being asked to continue, without telling anyone, without getting anything from it. I got something from it, I said. She waited. It kept me connected to him, I said. Made me feel like the promise was still alive. That's worth more than I can explain. She stood there a moment longer. The light was dropping. Tate had disappeared into the shop and left us alone without making a production of it. He's been my foreman 8 years. He has good instincts. I'd like to meet Addie, Nora said. If that's something you'd allow. Not now. Whenever it's right. She paused. And I'd like to buy you dinner sometime. Nothing formal. I just think my father would have wanted us to know each other properly. I thought about what Ray Ellison had said in that last hour. The part I hadn't written in the letter. Because it felt like something between men. He'd said he was less worried about Nora than he might have been. Because she was fierce and she was smart. And she was going to be fine. But he said sometimes fierce and smart and fine still needed to know that somebody in the world was paying attention. Not fixing. Not rescuing. Just paying attention. I think he was right about her. And I think he knew that finding each other, however long it took, was the last part of the promise, the part that completed it. Dinner sounds fine, I said. She nodded. She shook my hand, firm, the way her father used to shake hands. And she walked back to her car with the letter and the photograph. She didn't look back, and she didn't need to. I stood in the yard on Belridge Road and watched the silver car pull out onto the street and disappear. Tate came out of the shop with 2 cups of coffee and handed me one without saying a word. Some promises are bigger than the moment you make them. They grow while you're not looking, sending roots down into the ground of everything you do and who you are, until one afternoon in a work yard in Cartwright, Ohio, you hand a young woman a letter her father wrote, and you watch the thing finally, completely, come home. I drove back to the house at 6:30. Addie was at the kitchen table with her journal open and a pencil behind her ear, and she looked up when I came in. You look different, she said. Do I? She studied me the way she studies the sparrows. Like something happened. Something did, I said. I hung up my jacket and sat down across from her. I'll tell you about it someday. When you're a little older. She seemed to accept that. She went back to her journal, and I made us dinner. And outside the window, the evening settled down over everything the way it always does. Quiet, unhurried, faithful. The same as it's been every night since I got home. I wouldn't change a thing.